I told 312 stories, one for each day you slept. Some made up, some real, but every single one was about you. You came here to care for my son, but when that car skidded on the snow and I saw your body lying still, something inside me shattered. Today, something changed. Your eyes fluttered open, you looked at me, and then you said,
"Thank you for being here, for never giving up on me. And yes, I will marry you."
Nora Hayes was nervous. Her sweaty hands gripped the steering wheel as the GPS calmly announced, "You will arrive at your destination in 2 minutes." The road wound through the icy hills of Vermont, flanked by snow-covered pines. In the distance, the silhouette of the Whitmore mansion emerged. The house was majestic, with white columns and wide windows, straight out of a movie. But there was something about it, a quiet loneliness hanging in the air. When she rang the bell, she was greeted by an elderly housekeeper, polite, but with sorrowful eyes. "Mr. Whitmore is waiting in the study," she said, leading Nora through silent hallways. Daniel Whitmore was a man of presence, tall, gray-eyed, with a tired gaze. He had lost his wife 2 years earlier to a sudden aneurysm. Since then, he had been raising Noah, his 4-year-old son, almost entirely on his own. The interview was far from traditional. "Why do you want this job, Miss Hayes?" he asked directly. "Because I know what it's like to grow up missing someone," Nora replied sincerely, "and because I truly love children." A heavy silence followed. Then, little Noah peeked into the room, curious. Nora knelt down and offered him a small stuffed animal she carried in her bag. "Hi, astronaut. This is Captain Ron. He only travels with brave people." Noah smiled. That was the moment Daniel knew. She was different. Hours later, back at her apartment, Nora received the call. The job was hers. Her heart pounded. She had no idea that the next day, her life would change forever. The following morning, snow was falling heavily. Wrapped in her coat up to her chin, Nora drove toward the mansion, excited. She glanced at the plush toy on the passenger seat, smiled, and said to herself, "New life, Nora. You've got this." But as she rounded a sharp curve, the tires slipped. The car spun, skidded off the road, and tumbled down a snowy embankment. Silence. Everything turned white. The clock read 8:07 a.m. The nanny who was about to change everything never made it to her first day. Snow was falling in heavy flakes, as if the sky were weeping in silence. The road Nora was driving on was narrow, flanked by tall trees that seemed to watch her every move. She drove slowly, hands steady on the wheel, the radio softly playing an old Carpenter's song. On the passenger seat, Captain Ron sat waiting for a new mission. But that morning, fate had other plans. The curve was treacherous, sloped, hidden beneath a slick sheet of black ice. Nora slowed at the warning sign, but the tires didn't respond. The car slid as if it had a mind of its own. She turned the wheel, trying to regain control, but it was already too late. The sound of metal crashing against stone echoed through the woods. The car flipped twice before coming to rest on its side, nearly invisible beneath the white blanket of snow. Silence. Minutes later, a passing truck driver spotted the wreckage and called for help. Paramedics arrived quickly. Nora was unconscious, trapped between the seats, her face cut and bleeding, her expression strangely peaceful, as if she were simply asleep. At the hospital, the tests were swift. Internal bleeding stabilized, a fractured femur, cranial trauma, diagnosis, deep coma. Daniel Whitmore received the call at 10:42 a.m. "Mr. Whitmore, this is St. Mary's Hospital. Miss Nora Hayes was in a car accident on her way to your residence. Her condition is critical." For a moment, Daniel's world froze. He didn't understand why it struck him so hard. She was just the new nanny, a stranger. But when he arrived at the hospital and saw her lying there, pale and fragile, something inside him collapsed. "Does she have any family?" he asked, voice trembling. "We're trying to reach a distant brother in Illinois," the nurse replied. Daniel took a deep breath, looked at Nora, and then said, "She has me now. Treat her like she's family. I'll cover everything." That night, as the snow kept falling outside, Daniel sat beside her in silence. He held her cold hand, trying to understand why this stranger already lived somewhere inside him. It took 2 weeks in the hospital before doctors approved Nora to continue treatment at home. Her condition hadn't changed. The coma persisted. But Daniel couldn't bear the thought of leaving her in the cold, impersonal care of a clinic. The Whitmore mansion transformed. One of the guest rooms was converted into a miniature hospital. Monitors, oxygen, a reclining chair for visitors. It became Nora's new world, silent, suspended in fragile hope. Noah, curious, would peek into the room of the nanny he'd never met awake. "Is she sleeping, Daddy?" he asked often. "Yes, son, but it's a deep sleep. She's fighting inside, like a superhero," Daniel would reply, always with a lump in his throat. And so, the routine began. Every day, Daniel entered the room with a book in hand. He read aloud for 20, sometimes 30 minutes. Fairy tales, romance novels, even reports from his architecture firm. As if somehow Nora might be listening. He began to notice every detail about her. The way her eyelashes rested against her cheeks. The rhythm of her breath. The softness of her skin. And slowly, he started talking to her. Not just reading, but opening up. He told her about his pain, his loneliness, his memories of his late wife, the silence that echoed through the house. "Did you know Noah smiled today when he saw Captain Ron again? He took the plush to school, said he's the guardian of dreams. He laughed. He cried. He spoke. He waited." One night while the house slept, Daniel left the armchair and sat on the edge of her bed. Gently he took her hand in his. There was no movement, just warmth, and he whispered, "I don't know why you've stirred something in me, but I won't give up. Not today. Not ever. You're not alone." The next morning, Daniel had new curtains installed in her room, fresh flowers on the windowsill, and a soft playlist playing in the background. Because even asleep, Nora had become something alive in the house. As the months passed, Nora's silent presence became part of the household's rhythm. The room where she lay was never truly silent again. Every evening, at exactly 7 p.m., Daniel entered with a different book in hand. It was a ritual, a promise he never broke. Noah began calling her Sleeping Beauty Nanny. He would tiptoe into the room barefoot, leave colorful drawings on her nightstand, and whisper softly into her ear. "Today I drew you playing with me in the garden. You're gonna wake up soon, right?" Daniel watched in silence. Sometimes he smiled. Sometimes he held back tears. He started writing letters that would never be delivered, invented stories filled with distant kingdoms, sorrowful heroes, and women who slept for centuries until they heard the voice of someone who truly loved them. One night, after finishing one of those stories, Daniel pressed his forehead gently against hers and whispered, "If a soul exists, mine has already found yours, even if you never hear this." It was strange to love someone who never responded, but the feeling was real. It grew like roots beneath the soil, unseen, but unbreakable. People talked. Doctors suggested he distance himself, that he not form such deep attachments. But he had already gone far beyond reason. "It's not about hope, it's about presence," he once told a nurse. "I'm not waiting for her to wake up. I'm just saying, while she's here, she will be heard." In December, snow fell for 3 straight days. Daniel spent every night in her room. He spoke of his childhood, of Christmases with his parents, of the fear of losing again, and every night, he ended the same way. "Good night, Nora. Wherever you are, I hope you can feel all of this." In that house, the stories never stopped, because deep down, he believed that true love always found a way through even the deepest silence. It was May 12th, Nora's birthday. She would have turned 28. The mansion was silent, as if even the walls understood the weight of the day. Daniel woke early, had white lilies, her favorite, according to an old application form, delivered, and placed a small cake on the tray beside her bed. He spent the entire day there, reading old letters she had once exchanged with her mother, discovered by the nurse in a box of personal belongings. Each line revealed a piece of Nora, her kindness, her fears, her deep desire to find her place in the world. At dusk, Noah entered with a colorful envelope. "I made her a card," he said. "Can you read it to her, Daddy?" Daniel opened the envelope and read aloud. "Dear Nanny, I wish I could hug you today. I love you even though I don't know you. When you wake up, we'll play in the garden. Love, Noah." Daniel's voice cracked. That night, something different happened. He dressed in a crisp white shirt, put on cologne, and held a small blue velvet box in his hand. Sitting beside Nora's bed, he took a deep breath and began to speak. "I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, I want you to know these months have changed everything. You entered my life in silence, and still you saved me." He opened the box, a simple ring with a clear stone, delicate like her. "Nora Hayes, I love you. And even without hearing your voice, without feeling your embrace, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. If you ever wake up and feel anything like what I feel, say yes." He gently slid the ring onto her finger, as if placing a secret there. Then he rested his head beside hers, closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he slept. It was a spring morning. Sunlight filtered softly through the white curtains, dancing across the pale bedspread. Nora's room was quiet, except for the gentle instrumental playlist playing on loop, a soft melody Daniel had chosen months ago. He was in the kitchen making breakfast for Noah when the nurse rushed in, pale and breathless. "Mr. Whitmore, it's Nora. Come, now." Daniel dropped everything. He ran up the stairs as if time had exploded. He burst into the room, heart pounding, and then he saw it. Nora's eyes were open, not wide in panic, not dazed, open, clear, alive. She blinked slowly as if returning from a distant place. She looked around, weak but conscious, and when her gaze found Daniel, her eyes welled with tears. "Nora," he whispered, stepping closer. Tears streamed down his face. "You're here. My God, you came back." She tried to smile, her lips trembling, and whispered, "I heard the stories." Daniel took her hand, now warm, and kissed her forehead with the care of someone holding the world's most fragile miracle. "I told them all, every day. I never stopped." Nora closed her eyes briefly, as if sorting through memories heard in dreams. She took a deep breath, then looked at her hand. There it was, the ring. A shy smile, almost childlike, touched her lips. She looked back at him and asked, "You proposed to me?" Daniel laughed through tears. "I did, while you slept, because it was the only way I could say what I felt." Nora reached for his face, struggling. Her fingers touched his skin and she whispered, "Thank you for being here, for never giving up on me." She closed her eyes again, took a deep breath, and with a soft voice finished, "And yes, I will marry you." 2 weeks after waking up, Nora was already able to sit up with support and speak more clearly. The doctors called it a miracle. Daniel preferred to call it love. The mansion had changed. Life had returned to the halls, laughter, soft music, and a new scent lingered in the air. Fresh flowers and renewed hope. On the wooden porch on a sunny morning, Nora wore a light dress, her hair loosely pinned. Noah ran through the garden with Captain Ron in his hands, now wearing a superhero cape sewn by her own hands. Daniel arrived with 2 mugs of tea. He sat beside her in silence, as they often did. Then he said, "You know you can still change your mind, right?" She smiled, not looking directly at him. "I slept for 11 months. And still, you stayed. You loved me without me saying a single word. There's no way I could change my mind about someone like that." Silence. But the kind that says everything. That afternoon, the mansion's garden was decorated with simple elegance. A small altar between the trees, string lights overhead, petals scattered on the ground. Just a few guests. Only those who truly belonged in the story. Noah brought the rings, wearing a tiny suit and a smile even bigger than him. As he reached the altar, he whispered to Daniel, "She's ours now, right?" Daniel knelt down and replied, "She always was." When Nora appeared, everyone held their breath. It wasn't just because of her delicate beauty. It was the strength in her eyes, the presence of someone who had returned from silence. During the vows, she held Daniel's hands tightly and said, "You waited for me when no one else would. You loved me when I couldn't love back. Today I choose you, Not for everything you did, but for everything you were while I slept. He couldn't hold back the tears. And when the ceremony ended, the kiss they shared wasn't from a fairy tale. It was from two souls who fought for every second to get there. Nora smiled through teary eyes and whispered in his ear, "Now you can stop telling me stories. We're going to live one." There are stories that make us cry because of the pain, others because of their beauty. But few manage to do both, as if suffering and the purest kind of love were somehow intertwined. The Promise While You Slept is exactly that kind of story. This isn't just a romance. It's about unconditional presence, about a love that doesn't demand answers, doesn't impose conditions, doesn't expect anything in return. It's the kind of love that chooses to stay, even when everything around it is silent. Daniel didn't fall in love because of grand gestures or charming words. He fell in love with who Nora was, even without seeing her awake. In her, he saw a reflection of the life he had lost, and maybe a second chance at something he thought impossible. And the most powerful part? It wasn't just that love appeared. It's that love remained, every single day, for 11 months, without knowing if there would ever be a happy ending, or even an ending at all. How many of us would have had that courage? We live in an age of immediacy, where relationships are disposable, where love is often mistaken for temporary desire, and presence is replaced with distractions. Daniel chose the opposite. He slowed down. He stayed. He gave everything of himself to someone who couldn't give anything back. Yet, Nora represents life's fragility, the uncertainty of tomorrow, the reality that sometimes we are simply asleep inside, waiting for someone to remind us who we are. And when she wakes, she doesn't just return to consciousness. She wakes to a world that was built with love, patience, and unwavering faith. The story is also a meditation on time. How often do we complain about waiting, about silence, about unanswered prayers? But what if time is the invisible thread that weaves the most beautiful stories? What if patience is the secret language of true love? A proposal made during a coma may sound absurd at first, but when you look deeper, it becomes a symbol of something greater, a commitment to the unseen, to the soul, to what cannot be touched but can be felt. It's the "I choose you" spoken to the spirit, not the circumstance. And when she wakes, she doesn't just awaken from a physical coma. She wakes into a world where she was loved without needing to perform, without needing to give. Her silence was sacred, and it was honored. Her final words, "Now you can stop telling me stories. We're going to live one," are a powerful reminder that after the waiting, the caring, and the faith, true love is what finally finds space to bloom in reality. This story is a call to be more patient, more present, to love more deeply, even without guarantees, to understand that real love is the kind that continues, even when everything else is asleep. Because in the end, some people wake up with a kiss, but others wake up with the certainty they were loved while they slept. This kind of narrative forces us to confront a fundamental question. How willing are we to love without immediate return? In a world of instant replies, likes, read receipts, and performance-based affection, Daniel's love seems almost naive. Until we realize, maybe that's exactly what this world is starving for. Daniel wasn't trying to win Nora. He wasn't making gestures hoping for recognition. He cared because it was right, because she mattered. And that makes us reflect on the kind of love we practice. Are we present only when it's convenient? Or are we capable of staying, even when the person beside us has nothing to offer? How many people around us are living in emotional comas right now? People who can't smile anymore, who've disconnected from hope, who feel lost. And how many of those people have at least one soul telling them, "I'm here, I see you." Even if the world doesn't, even if you've forgotten who you are, I haven't. Nora doesn't just symbolize someone in a physical coma. She represents those who need time, space, and love to come back to life, emotionally, spiritually, internally. And Daniel is the embodiment of a love that waters what seems dry, that whispers into the dark, that refuses to give up. Ultimately, this story isn't about a proposal. It's about presence as healing, about waiting not as weakness, but as the bravest choice, about keeping the light on for someone, even when the world has blown out every candle. And perhaps the most painful, yet most beautiful question this story leaves with us is, would you have stayed? Would you have stayed for someone in silence? Would you have told stories to someone who couldn't hear you? Would you have loved someone with no promise of return, just because your heart knew there was something real? If the answer is yes, then you've understood everything, because true love doesn't depend on the answer. It is the answer.